Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser TV's Premier League fantasy show. I am here without Gally in the black and white because it's a sad week yet again as I keep finding the red arrows. And I just want to know if anyone can show me the green arrow path. And then maybe there will be a little bit more color in my life. Unfortunately, it was another rough week in my life. Fortunately for Gally, he had a little bit of a better week, but I think part of the reason that he's missing today is that he's out looking for a reason to continue playing this game. Because he transferred in Senesi, who quickly goes down with a really bad injury. He's most likely going to be out for a while, missing the double game week that a lot of people are bringing him in for. So once Gally finds the meaning to life or the meaning of this game again, we'll see him again. But nonetheless, I am here to take us down some sort of a journey. I don't know why at this point, if you are watching, if you want to take any advice from me whatsoever. Yes, I am in the top 1 million. No, that is not impressive. Yes, I know a thing or two. No, they're not helpful. But alas, here we are. So let's get right into it. Looking at the team of the week this past week, we can see there are 4 Arsenal players. That can never happen. You're only allowed 3 max in a single team. But taking a look at some scores here, some standouts. Areola with 13, of course, the penalty save boosted those numbers. A week where there were a lot of clean sheets, honestly, for goalkeepers. We've not seen that consistently throughout this year. So the fact that we were able to see many and not really have anyone take any advantages of it, right? I mean, there were moments throughout this year where a clean sheet one way or another could have really boosted someone's score. But unfortunately, Ariel with 13, Kelleher had a clean sheet, Leno had a clean sheet, Dubravka had a clean sheet. So there were just a lot more cleans that we're not used to seeing, at least. Out in the back, we've got Ben White, Fabian Schär, and Jakub Kivior. Of course, 2 Arsenal players in their clean sheet against a very, very bad Sheffield United team. You guys, I don't want to say I was too young for that whole City team because I definitely wasn't, but I don't think I really appreciated how bad that whole team was to really appreciate how bad this Sheffield United team is. I don't know, maybe you guys more experienced players or more experienced in the league itself, comparatively between those 2 years and these 2 teams, how bad is Sheffield United? I mean, it is just awful. And to think that there were actual players that we considered using for this game from that team is just awful. I'm going to try and blow this up a little bit, see if there's, there we go. That's probably better for you guys. So scrolling down, we've got the likes of Phil Foden, Harry Wilson, Kai Havertz, Lewis Cook, Gabriel Martinelli. Of course, Havertz and Martinelli in that 6-0 thrashing against Sheffield. Lewis Cook with a nice return. Harry Wilson and then you see up front Muniz with 14 and 11 respectively in their demolishing of Brighton. Brighton also today losing 4-0 to Roma. So if you're on any Brighton assets, and I'm talking to myself here, and I'm going to try and listen to myself, good luck. I mean, that's pretty much the best that I've got for you because who the fuck knows what De Zerbi is going to put out there and what we're going to see from them on a week-to-week basis. Will you get a 14-pointer from Pascal Gross? Or will you get absolutely nothing from Brighton? You will never know, so that's the fun. Phil Foden, once again, proving why he's probably the best pick in this entire game the whole year. He's having an incredible year. Obviously, Holland's going to get a lot of plaudits for fantasy, but Phil Foden, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, right? We've been talking about Phil Foden being such a good pick in this game for so long. The only problem that we've had in the past has been that, why hasn't Pep just played him every time? I think that's been the biggest issue. Now that Pep is playing him all the time, we're surprised, some of us, that he's actually getting these numbers, even though we expected it all along. So Phil Foden with a 15, the highest scoring player from this week. And then rounding up top, Ollie Watkins and Muniz, they're 13 and 11 respectively. Ollie, someone that we're used to seeing up there, hopefully that we continue seeing up there. I wouldn't bank much on the likes of Wilson, Cook, and Muniz being up there consistently. Could we see Martinelli, Kivior, White, Schär there again? Yeah, probably. Havertz, if we look at Havertz, the last 3 weeks, 14, 14, and 12. Now, all 3 of those, I guess he has a goal and an assist, but in most of those cases, they've just been a garbage time goal or assist. There really hasn't been much He just happens to be there. They're already up 4-5-0, and he's just there, and he gets a nice little tap in, whatever the case might be. So, yes, the points are nice. They might be a little inflated, to be honest, especially given the past 3 fixtures. But Arsenal scoring 6-5, 4-6, that's a lot of goals. A lot of goals in that team. And so, obviously, they've got Brentford coming up this week, and then they've got a blank, and then they've got City. So this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting, right? Because what we're starting to see now, especially with there's a double game week this week, kind of, right? Because when we look at teams like Luton and we look at teams like Bournemouth, yes, do they have assets that are worth having on your team? Probably. Are we sure which of those assets, those specifically, you should go for? Not necessarily. Dominic Solanke's probably the only one that's absolutely nailed that probably makes sense in your teams. Alfie Doughty, if you're looking for a solid defender for the double, that's pretty much it. I know some people have flirted with the idea of Tavernier. I don't know if I've seen enough from Bournemouth specifically to see what they can do in these 2 games. Because when we look at Bournemouth, they've got Sheffield and Luton. Not the worst. Obviously those are good fixtures, right? But as far as the points that they're going to get, we don't know how they're going to come out. They look absolutely dreadful some weeks, and some weeks they look pretty decent. So we're not quite sure what we're going to get from there, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's kind of jump into a little bit of looking at the transfers in and out this week. Kind of what Gally and I do every week. We take a look, see what's going on. At the aforementioned Dominic Solanke and the Alfie Doughty there, 1 and 3 respectively, on the most transferred in this week. And then Morris there as number 2. This is most likely, obviously, they've got the double game week, Luton does, as well as Bournemouth. So you're trying to get the most out of these fixtures that you can. Now, with that being said, a double game week doesn't always mean guaranteed points, right? You just because theoretically you have more chance at points, it doesn't mean you're going to get more points, especially when we're looking at the likes of Luton and Bournemouth. I think, obviously, matchups always play a big part in these match weeks, in these game weeks. Bournemouth against Sheffield and Luton, and then Luton has Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. Not necessarily terrible fixtures. Luton's playing a lot more open than they used to play. Honestly, we saw a lot of bus parking early on in the year, and they've really opened up and allowed themselves to be vulnerable very often. But on the flip side, that's allowed them to go forward a bit more freely, and I feel like we've seen them score goals. It's just a matter of where those goals will come from. I think seeing Alfie Doughty on that screen is probably a good sign as to the direction that most of these FPL players are going, because they recognize that a player like Alfie Doughty, he has several crosses a game. He's on corner kicks. He's going to be most likely anywhere near any of Luton's goals, whether he is a direct assist into the goal or if he is the pass before the assist. There's going to be a lot coming from that left side from him, honestly. The last 2 transfers in this week, we see Jared Bowen and Heung-min Son. These feel more like free hit punts, if I'm being honest, especially more so Bowen than I think Son. I think Son is a guy that makes sense long-term. I don't know if Bowen makes sense long-term given the price, given what's available around that amount there. So I think, especially this week, a lot of players are free hitting because they want to get a bunch of these doubles in, or they're free hitting because they don't have enough players, or because they're worried with Liverpool and City playing against each other that a lot of those assets will cancel each other out. I think that's always sometimes a difficult thing about having 2 teams at the top clash against each other, is that when you have 5 to 6 assets between those 2 teams, a 1-1 game, a 1-0 game, anything like that, it doesn't necessarily bode well for fantasy. And so we see a little bit of that on the outs when we see De Bruyne and Alvarez there as 2 of the 5 most transferred out players. I think part of that is that De Bruyne just isn't worth the price tag that he's at right now. Obviously, anytime we talk about fantasy, the correlation between fantasy and on the pitch isn't always perfect, right? De Bruyne, while he is a fantastic midfielder and he's a great player, right now he's not great for fantasy because the amount that he costs with his output, it doesn't make sense to invest your money there. Alvarez, similarly, I think there's a big, when we're looking at Solanke, Morris, I think there's a big crowd that are going off of Alvarez to go on Solanke or Morris for this double. So I think that's not necessarily so much to do with Alvarez not playing well as much as it is Solanke and Morris getting an extra chance to score. And then when we look at there's three more. There's Trippier, Richarlison, and Tony. Tony, Brentford just not playing well at all. I mean, they might leak 5-6 goals against Arsenal this week too. It's gonna be a rough one to watch. Trippier has a bit of those injury concerns. He's a bit pricier as well. I think especially when we're talking about this double game week, people going on to Doughty from Trippier probably makes sense given what they're looking at. And then Richarlison obviously hurt, so he's going to be gone. So no point in having a guy like Richarlison on your team for right now. Taking a look forward, obviously we want to, let's share this tab here. So going to take a look at the fixture difficulty. For some reason, I couldn't get the one that we always use up, which sorts this a lot better. But when we look at this big, I guess, if you will, not this big blank, but the game week 29 is a big blank. Honestly, you've got the likes of Arsenal, Bournemouth, Brighton, Palace, United, Sheffield United, Wolves, Chelsea, Newcastle, Everton, Liverpool, Man City. I mean, that's a lot of teams that are missing. And, if that's going to be a lot of players free hit weeks as well, just because there isn't much left, honestly. Very slim pickings when it comes to those. You've got the likes of Fulham, Luton, West Ham, Aston Villa, Burnley, Forest, Spurs, Brentford. Not a lot to go between all those. So we'll probably get into that next week, obviously, as we look into that big blank. But this week, so this is sorted here from the easiest fixtures to the worst fixtures. Arsenal's on top here at home against Brentford. That's probably a better fixture than Bournemouth at home twice against Sheffield and Luton. The thing here that was difficult for anyone on Arsenal assets is that we've seen the last few weeks is that those goals have been shared between a lot of different players, right? You've got Havertz getting on the board. You've got Odegaard. You've got Trossard. You've got Saka. You've got Rice. And you've Martinelli. You can even possibly see like an Eddie Nketiah come in. Like there's just so many spots where those points can come from that it can be difficult to really nail down which assets to go for. We kind of touched upon Bournemouth a bit, right? You've got potentially Tavernier. You've got Dominic Solanke, probably the easiest choice there. If you want to kind of go crazy, you could go the Neto shout in goal. Do they have a chance at keeping 2 cleans? Yeah, I think so. But Luton's probably more dangerous. Not probably. Luton's definitely more dangerous than Sheffield. But there's a chance that Bournemouth could keep two cleans there. And that could be a nice, 14, 16 points from Neto in the back. Something to consider. Brighton we touched upon a little bit. I think the problem with Brighton is the inconsistency, right? We could go from seeing them bang in 4 goals out of nowhere to then giving up 7 against Roma and Fulham and looking like absolute dog shit. So that's not necessarily a good place to be, especially if you've got their defenders. If you're on Lewis Dunk or if you're on a Estupinian, like some of us, that can be a difficult place to be. Forest at home, definitely a better fixture than Forest away, obviously. So I expect that one to be pretty open. I'm probably going to stick on Gross just because I don't want to waste a move somewhere where I don't think where it wouldn't make sense. So I think I'm gonna stick on Gross. Crystal Palace, they've got Luton at home. Not a bad fixture, honestly. That one's going to be pretty open as well. I think Palace themselves, once they get all their healthy bodies back, once Elise's back and healthy, I think there's going to be some interesting pieces, some good differentials potentially going into the end of the year. I think right now it's a little bit of a wait and see game still, especially with the new manager. So that's at least where I'm at with Crystal Palace. I know that there have been some Anderson shouts, some Gahey shouts throughout the year. There have been some good points here and there. There hasn't been that consistency. I think that's overall the note that I'll keep making is that some of the consistency is difficult, and this is what this game makes you really think about how difficult it is to pick some assets that typically look really good. I mean, right? There are players on each team theoretically that could fit a team. It's just a matter of if they're going to get you points that week or not. As we scroll down more, obviously we see Luton's double. And this is going back to talking about what good fixtures are versus bad fixtures. A double sounds nice, 2 chances at points, right? But you're away at Crystal Palace, you're away at Bournemouth. Obviously, it could be worse, right? They could be away at City and away at Liverpool or something like that. But it doesn't necessarily bode well. And then you look forward, they've got Forest at home, which is fine, but then you've got Tottenham away, Arsenal away, Bournemouth at home, City away, and that cluster there is awful. I would avoid that at all costs. So if you're bringing players in for this double specifically, you might have to think about then transferring them out. So the thing that you have to remember is making sure that your transfers aren't in vain, if you will. Your transfers will make sense for an extended period of time. Because if you end up in this roulette of where you're just bringing in a player and then taking him out, and then bringing that same player in a couple of weeks and taking him back out, you're going to miss on points. You're going to miss on a bit of money because you're constantly doing that roulette there. So that's something to think about. United at home against Everton, Sheffield away at Bournemouth. Scrolling down some more here, we've got Villa at home to Spurs. That game, that could be a very physical. It could be either a very physical, tough one, like a 1-1, or that could be a 4-3. And if that's the case, something like Ollie Watkins, of course, is always good to have. Maybe having Son or maybe, I mean, it's going to be the crazy shout, but even Timo Werner. I mean, he is part of the Spurs attack in every way. He hasn't necessarily returned the points fantasy wise that that you would want, but he is always in range of getting those points. So someone to look out for. Scrolling down further, Chelsea and Newcastle, that's going to be cagey. I don't know that one's a tough one to predict. I'd probably stay away from most of those unless you're stuck on like a Cole Palmer at, a mid-5 midfielder that Cole is and the amount of points he scored. There's no reason not to transfer him out unless you're doing a free hit or wild card where you're just taking a punt on someone else. But otherwise, no need to kind of move away from that. Coming back down, then we get to the fun stuff, right? So you've got Everton away at United. Not many people left with Everton assets. Maybe a Branthwaite here and there. If you've got Branthwaite, probably sitting on your bench because then once you get past Newcastle away, there's some decent fixtures there, especially defensively, I think. Or if you want to take a crazy shout at a midfielder, there might be someone like Idrissa Gueye there, but not necessarily anyone else. Spurs. They have a nice cluster, I think, personally, from Fulham to Forest, those 4 weeks. This Villa fixture is going to be tough, obviously. But past that, looking at the likes of Son, possibly looking at the likes of Werner, Kulusevski having a lot of points this year, Maddison coming back. I mean, there are some points to be had there. And then Brentford, we touched upon a bit, not a lot there. They are just ridden with injuries. They're awful. They have just been completely battered the last couple months, honestly. We've just seen them be completely opened up. They're not the same organized, compact Brentford that we're used to seeing. They're really open. They're really poor defensively. There's not much offensively besides, a couple stunners here and there. It's not great. And then you get to Liverpool and City. This is, the biggest game of the year for both of these clubs up to this point. As far as fantasy goes, it's a pretty big week as well because we start to get into the conversation of captaincy. If Mo is going to be fit, Mo played about 20 minutes today, I think it was. Obviously, Haaland is fit. We had those comments come out from Haaland regarding Trent. Is that going to play any sort of narrative towards this game? It's going to be an interesting one. I feel like we often see a really cagey 1-0, 2-1 kind of affair between Liverpool or City, or it gets broken up, it breaks up, and it's like a 4-1, a 3-0 kind of thing. So looking at the assets from both City and Liverpool, it's tough because I don't expect a clean sheet from either team, to be honest. I feel like there are goals to be had from both sides. The problem is I don't know where those goals will come from. If I had to put money on it, I would say Foden and Nunez. If I won one from each team, I would probably pick Foden and Nunez between those two. But it's going to be an interesting one. I think a lot of players, especially we saw with De Bruyne being transferred out, Alvarez being transferred out, that they are also a bit worried about this blank. And then City, home against Arsenal, home against Villa. These three fixtures plus the blank, it doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of points, right? There's a little bit of some hesitancy when it comes to the City assets right now. And so I think that's some people are looking at possibly wildcarding then in this Arsenal, was it 30-31? Probably going to be a very popular wild card just because we're not sure how this is going to end up here between City, Liverpool, and then obviously after the blank, we'll get a better evaluation of where the teams are at and their fitness and whatnot. So that's a big thing to decide for some of you guys, especially if you have some of your chips left. I'm going to take a sip of tea because I feel like I've been talking a million miles a minute, and I apologize for just me spewing nonsense. If you're here, hello, thanks for joining in. Take this moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are coming out with content nearly every day. We are also on Patreon now. So if you're not on Patreon yet, please go over to Patreon, give us a follow. If you want to give us $1 a month, that would be super. If you want to give us more, that would be even better. I'm going to play this little thing here because
like and subscribe, smash that like button. Like and subscribe, smash that like button.
And if you're in here as well, say hello. I mean, do you play fantasy, or are you just watching this just to watch me not know what I'm talking about? Are you good at this game, or do you hate it like most other players? Do you wish that you could sub players if they're hurt? That's always a nice big talking point. Is why can't we make lineup adjustments after the first kickoff? It seems super easy to do, but nonetheless, here we are. I'll let that banner play for a moment, and I'm gonna take a sip because that's what I said I would do. So. If you haven't yet, Reckless Coffee Roasters. I'm going to be honest, this isn't coffee. This isn't from them. It's just the tea from me. But they do have fantastic coffee and some cool merch, so you should definitely check them out. So that is all looking back on this week, or looking ahead on this week, excuse me. Let's take a look back and see how... Excuse me. God damn it. I hate that this is live. I suck at this. Okay. So, taking a look, let me blow this up for you folks. This was my team this past week. The safety was 75. What that essentially means is that would have been the score you would need to hit to essentially not move rankings up or down, right? That the average score. So I was 6 points off of there. Would there have been anything? Areola instead of Dubravka would have put me there. And if I would have played like a 3-5-2 with Darwin instead of a Stupinian, that would have made sense as well. However, looking back, everything, it's obviously hindsight is 2020, right, guys? I mean, this is the thing we have to remember with any of this is that we're always going to look back and see what we should have done, what we could have done. When we look at this, we have to remember what we were thinking at the time. And at the time, Darwin was not 100%. There was a chance he was going to be starting, but most likely he was going to come off the bench. How long was he going to play? Who knew? So he was going to go on the bench for me. Solanke was also nursing a knock. So that was something that was part of my consideration in choosing my squad. And honestly, I had more faith in Newcastle than West Ham. And I didn't expect... Who expected Areola to make a penalty save? So that's just what it is. But overall, I mean, not necessarily usually 69 is nice, a decent week. But when everyone scores a lot of points, it doesn't look as good. So Doughty was my star, I guess, and Heung-min Son. I captained Son. If I captained Foden, obviously different situation there. I'd probably be a little bit happier. But overall, Palmer with 5, Foden with 15, De Bruyne a killer with 2, Son with 7, but the cap, Gross with 1, Gabrielle, I subbed in for Zinchenko, or I transferred in for Zinchenko, so I'm glad I made some sort of swap there. Otherwise, I would have lost some points. I probably would have played Darwin then, so maybe I would have lost 1 point in total. But even then, glad to have finally brought in an Arsenal defender. I feel like I've been an Arsenal defender that's been playing. I've been sleeping on that, and I'm glad that worked out. As you can see, no Holland in my team yet, and no Holland in my team for the rest of the year. I am a man of my word. I told Gally very early on, probably back in October, that Erling Haaland will not be on my FPL team for the rest of the year. And I meant it. Because honestly, as much as this game annoys me and frustrates me, I think I have a lot more fun building a team without Haaland. It opens up the money a lot, and it allows for much more flexibility. I wish I had more midfielder spots, honestly, sometimes. I wish I could play, like a 4-3-6-1. If I could, that would be great, because there's a lot of good midfielders that I like. But that's where we're at. So moving forward, going into next week, into this upcoming week, I should say, I'm going to have Alfie Dottie and Solanke on the double. I'm probably going to transfer De Bruyne down. My only hesitation is to who, because I think ultimately I want to get back up to Mo, because Mo will be back and will be healthy. Knock on wood. Knock on every piece of wood in every fucking house right now. So that is my goal, is to go back, is to take De Bruyne to Mo. But I am not feeling great about Mo this week against City. I'd much rather just have Foden and Darwin out there, and then bring De Bruyne down. I might even bring him down to like a Douglas Luiz. I think it's crazy how good Douglas Luiz has been in fantasy, and he seems to score every time they're at home. So they're playing at home, and so I feel like it's a good chance to get some points there. It's a 1 week punt. I know I said earlier that you shouldn't really focus on that, but it's just a means to an end for me. I want to get to Mo, and I just need to take a week on someone else, because I'm pretty okay with everyone else. Defensively, I might take a look into potentially maybe taking out a Stupinian, but I don't know. I could just roll with 3 in the back and just hope for the best. I plan on wild carding after the Liverpool City blank, so in game week 30. I don't want to stick on too many assets from Arsenal, City, and Liverpool. I think that's going to be very popular. The 3 best teams in the league, you're always going to have the most players on your team, or at least the top players of this game are going to have 7 to 9 assets from the best teams, because it just makes sense. They get points, right? This game is about getting points, and you want to put yourself in the best position to get the most points. And if that's what makes sense, that's what makes sense. That's it. So that's going to be kind of what I'm going after. Looking over at my friends, I use that term loosely, Gally, just kidding. Looking over at Gally's team this week, he couldn't have done anything better. I know he transferred in Morris, and he went with a 3-4-3 with Saliba, Doughty, Senesi, and then you see, of course, Odegaard, Saka, Gross, De Bruyne, Morris, Haaland, Watkins. I guess the only thing that he could have done is captain Watkins instead of Haaland. But when you have Haaland and you're spending that much money on a certain player, you're going to captain that player, because this goes back to conversations that him and I have had the whole year, have had last year. When you are investing so much money into someone like Erling Haaland, like Mo Salah, having either one and not capping them kind of feels gross in a way, no pun intended. But the fact that you're investing so much money into someone that you're not feeling confident enough that he'll get enough points to put an armband on him, it just doesn't make sense. So the nice thing with people who have Haaland is that usually they're just going to captain Haaland automatically. So anytime Haaland doesn't haul, I feel really good about myself, because it's another week where I go, oh yeah, that's exactly why I don't have Haaland, and that's fine. But then, when he does bang in 3 goals and he's at 28 points after being captain, then that's when it starts to hurt a little bit more. But all in all, like I said, I've been having a great time not having Haaland, so it is what it is. I think We chatted a little bit on Discord, and obviously the Senesi injury does hurt Galley quite a bit. I know he transferred him in for the sole purpose of getting the most out of this double. And I think having the Bournemouth defender like Senesi would have been great. We talked about earlier how both fixtures, there's a good chance at a clean. It's just not necessarily, it's not a given, of course. But Senesi would have been the best player to have in that situation. Unfortunately, now that he's going to be out, I don't know where he's going to go from here. I wonder if he's going to pivot or if he's going to stock him on the bench. Who knows? But as we can see, looking over, he did rise up to top 185,000 now for Galley, which puts him many hundreds of thousands ahead of me. Unfortunately, he caught up and in a pretty bad way for me. It's not great. I promised him that I would beat him this year, and I am not able to come through on that promise right now. But there are still 11 weeks left, so a lot can happen. A couple captain choices here and there, a couple extra points, who knows. But I would like to slowly finish and wrap this episode off with taking a look at our American Scouser standings. We have Johnny Mac Reds, top 8,000th in the world. How impressive is that? We have also unused substitute in the top 10,000. We have 2 players in our American Scouser Cup that are in the top 10,000 in the world out of 12 plus million. That is, it's incredible. And honestly, having even 5 guys, five players in the top 40,000 is really impressive. We'll round out the top 10. We have Klopback, which is a team run by none other than Galley's wife, Kelly. So congratulations, Kelly, on still having a fantastic year. The entire time, up until about 4 weeks ago, I was having the time of my life thinking about how far ahead I was of both of the Galvins. And now both of the Galvins have overtaken me, and I am just waving from many yards away as they slowly drift off into the sunset, and I'm left to die on an island by myself. But Kelly, they're in 6th. Pitbull, Rubbing Beckers, the Clippity Clops, and King of the Clop round out our top 10. Our top 10, all of which in the top 170,000. Galley just barely missing out on the top 10 by 4 points. But I imagine if he has himself another good week, he can definitely crack that top 10. As we can see, many of these players, besides, I should also mention Clippity Clops. That's Scott Fishkin. He is also part of the American Scouser family here as well. So congrats to you. But besides, he doesn't have, does he have Holland at all? He does. Okay, never mind. He has Holland. I was going to say, if he doesn't have Holland, that's crazy. But yeah, as you can see, most players, does he have? Yep. All the players in the top 10 have Holland because they're smart. And they know that in order to win this game, you need points. And Holland does score points. The only thing is Holland costs a lot of money and is a boring pick. So hence why I am not on it. But that'll pretty much do it for the show, honestly, you guys. I appreciate everyone watching. Thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate the views. We try to do this every Thursday evening. Sometimes life gets in the way and it can be difficult. But hopefully we continue to build a fantasy audience here and have some fun interaction with the fans. And if you guys ever want to send in your teams, if you ever have any questions, if you want advice on anything, please feel free to reach out. You can reach us on Facebook. You can reach us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can join our Discord. We've got a great time in the Discord. We talk about everything, honestly, from Liverpool to whiskey to smoking meat to music to film, TV, music. I already said music. That's how much we talk about music. I had to say it twice. It's just a great time. It's just a community that we're trying to build, and everyone in there is great. Obviously, every once in a while, just like family, you're gonna find someone to argue with, but that's fun. You gotta keeps it spicy, keeps it lively, right? But yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope like Gally would say, that your transfers hit and you score a lot of points, not more than us, because otherwise then we would be out of a job. And frankly, I don't know who keeps paying us to do this anyway. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Our next show will be tomorrow morning, Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The morning show with Timochin, most likely with John and Anan. That's always a good time. Saturday, no show, but then Sunday, we will see you for the pre-match for the huge fixture against City. I will be hosting that pre-match, so I'll see you guys then. And then we will go from there. So thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a great night. And until next time, sayonara, as they say in some parts of the world. And we're off.